So with that, Neeraj, it's all yours, and I'll join in at the end.
Okay. I hope you can all hear me. Again, welcome to this session on NIRF ranking. I know we got a flavor of it in Dr. Shettar's keynote presentation. This session is going to be moderated by Dr. Vijay Kanabar from Boston University and myself, Neeraj Butch from Michigan State University. We have three academic leaders who are going to share their thoughts about NIRF ranking and ranking in general, and what are the attributes of sort of moving up in the ranking. And the three panelists are Professor Saxena he's a distinguished professor, has been a provost and a vice chancellor. So he's held significant leadership positions at the University of Arkansas. We have Professor Gowdar, who is a professor and director of the MIT Academy of Engineering, and Professor Reddy, who's the principal of Vardhaman College. As I had mentioned, the session is going to be moderated by myself, Neeraj Butch. I'm a faculty in Civil and Environmental Engineering and Department Chair at Michigan State University, and Professor Vijay Kanabar, who's a director and a professor at Boston University. Before I turn it over to Professor Saxena, just a few housekeeping notes, and I think Dr. Kanabar already mentioned it, that the chat is going to be disabled till Dr. Reddy is done with his presentation. So this will give you an opportunity to focus on the presentations, formulate your thoughts and questions, and then as soon as the chat is open, you can type in your questions, and Dr. Kanabar will be moderating that part of the session. For the speakers, I'm going to be controlling your slide deck. So if you just say next, I'll try my best to move the slides forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Saxena for his presentation. Each speaker has about 6 minutes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Neeraj, and thank you, Vijay, and thank you, Krishna, for giving me this opportunity to speak to this group. Very impressive presentation from Shettar. That reminds me of the things that we learned about 30 years ago from John White, who was the Dean of Engineering at Georgia Tech, under whom I served as a department head, benchmarking and understanding quantitatively what it is that you must do in order to improve your rankings. So let me just share a couple of conceptual stories, contextual stories. I was at Georgia Tech for a long time, and I started there as a department head back in 1992. And a new dean of engineering by the name John White came there, and he said that within 10 years, we are going to move to top 5 ranked universities by the U.S. News and World Report survey, the news. At that time, Georgia Tech was ranked somewhere around 17th or 18th, so that was a tough climb. And then he handed me the job of the department head in School of Material Science and Engineering, which was ranked at number 30, while all the other departments, 7 departments, were ranked much higher, and some of them were already in the top 10. So when he gave me the offer, he said, I want a 10-year commitment out of you. And I want a commitment that you're going to take this department and make it rank in the top 10 to line up with the other departments in the College of Engineering. And you will have support. You will have resources. You can hire faculty. We will give them good startup packages. And so you can go out and hire top-notch faculty, but I need results. So that was one. Then Dr. White moved to University of Arkansas as the chancellor of the university, and he started working on me to come there as the dean of engineering. And I eventually, in 2002, I did go to the University of Arkansas, where things were quite different from Georgia Tech. Resources were there, but not to the same extent. It was a only public institution, so it had a very different mission from what Georgia Tech had. And we had to basically temper our expectations accordingly. I couldn't go there and say that I'm going to get this college ranked in the top 10 because that was not possible to do given the resources and the expectations from the stakeholders. Now to give you the results at Georgia Tech after 10 years as department head, I was able to get it to number 11, didn't break the top 10. But the important thing is that the journey had begun. And this was, I quit that position in 2002. And last year it was ranked number 2. That department was ranked number 2 in the US News and World Report. So it is for the long haul. And University of Arkansas, similar results were extremely good. And there I served as the Dean of Engineering for 9 years. So basically what I want to do is to address my comments not to the top ranked institutions. I want to speak to the beyond 200 rankings that Dr. Shetar was talking about. Those that aspire to get ranked in that and are not quite there, because the strategies that I'm going to talk about are more applicable to them, and they're not meant for people that already have high rankings. You know, they have to do some of the same things, but the strategies are different, and I've reserved those for some other occasion. I'll use my 5 minutes to basically talk about why rankings matter. As it says, rankings are external validation of the institution's own efforts to continuously improve. If you maintain status quo, that will lead to lower rankings in the future because everybody else is improving. So you don't have that choice to not participate in that game, regardless of whether you like them or you dislike them. Then the top institutional leadership is absolutely key. Unless they believe that the institution needs to be ranked and they provide the resources and they provide the context, it's not going to happen. So improvements need resources that must strategically be allocated to motivate the right behavior from faculty and staff. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, then the other point I want to make is patience. Patience is key. Timescales for tangible results. And that is why I use my example from Georgia Tech. You know, we started back in 1992, ranked somewhere around 28 to 29, going up to rank number 2. That happened last year. And more than 25 years basically elapsed between that time. So it may take 10 to 25 years to see significant movements in institutional ranking. And that is precisely because institutions that are already ranked high are fighting to keep their spots. So in order to improve, you have to improve faster than them. And that's a very important thing to realize. It's just like, you know, I will make an analogy with the 100 meters dash at the Olympics. If you look at every Olympic, you know, a new record is set for 100 and 200 meters dash. And if you look at how different nations are performing, it is a competition. And within their own nations, people are doing a lot better than they did in the past Olympics. So it is a competition. It's very hard to get those rankings, but yet in pursuit of rankings, you do make your performances a lot better. The most important point in all this, and that is why I saved it for the last, faculty and staff development and retention is essential. You know, developing a reputation and productivity levels for being considered a good teacher or researcher takes years or even decades. If faculty and staff are in out of a revolving doors, the institution can never get ahead. You know, just imagine that you've developed somebody after 5 years, they're gaining some notoriety as a good teacher and a good researcher. And the next thing you know is they move somewhere else. So the institutional leadership has to make sure that the good people are retained and there is continuity. And I have tried to work with a lot of Indian institutions, and retention and faculty development is a huge, huge issue. So without that, nothing is going to move. So, this is, as I said, retention of good people is directly related to improvement in rankings, and it is a two-way street. If you improve in rankings, you will be, it'll be easier for you to retain your faculty, and if you retain your faculty, the rankings will improve. So this is a very broad overview of some of the essentials that are required for being in the ranking game. And those institutions that are not in the top 200 at this time, I think they have to work on these essentials before they can even imagine that they can successfully compete in that beauty contest. So thank you very much. I think my time must be up. I'll move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Professor Saxena. The next speaker is Professor Gaudar.
Good evening. Good morning for the people outside India. First of all, I thank IUCEE, Dr. Krishna, Dr. Vijay, and Dr. Neeraj for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. Basically, I'll be sharing upon three aspects. First aspect being the different categories or the disciplines in which the NIRF ranking is done. Secondly, it has already been stressed upon by Dr. Ashok Shettar, but still, let me talk about certain parameters of NIRF ranking and their weightages that are required to be achieved for higher ranking. And lastly, let me talk about some key factors which are related to NIRF ranking. Next slide, please. Thank you. First, the first edition of NIRF ranking was introduced in the year 2016 with 4 disciplines, namely university, engineering, management, and pharmacy. In the second edition, 2 more disciplines were added to make it 6. That is, overall and colleges were added. And in the third edition, that is in 2018, 3 more disciplines were added, basically medical, architecture, and law. And finally, in the 4th edition, there were no changes, but in the 5th edition, 1 more discipline was added, that was dental, and totally in 2019 and 20, there was 10 disciplines in all. Next slide, please. So this is how the editions of the NIRF ranking have increased from the initial 4 to the 20 in the present 2020. Next slide, please. As this has been already highlighted by Dr. Ashok Shettar, there are fairly 5 important points which are weighed on a scale of 100, and then the weighted is given to each of the parameters, namely for teaching and learning resources, the weightage given is 30%. For research and professional practices, the weightage given is 30%. For graduate outcomes, the weightage given is 20%. And finally, for 4 and 5, outreach and inclusivity and perception, the weightage given is 10%. But however, one of the important points that has been noted here is that the rubric that are developed for NIRF ranking are basically very objective. They try to remove the part of the subjectivity to a possible extent. And also, the objectives or the criteria or the matrix is totally dependent on the factual data, which is going to be verified and validated by a third party, including the institution themselves. The important outside agencies that do this are Information and Library Network Center situated in Gandhinagar. It is an autonomous inter-university center of the UGC. And also for research publications and other verification, they use Elsewhere and Clarivate Analytics. Next slide, please. Now I would like to share the key factors from each of the points. The first is faculty is a very important part of the NIRF ranking. It's not only the PhD faculty that is important, it is also the faculty with greater experience. Basically, there are 3 categories considered in the faculty weightage. Faculty with experience of 8 years, faculty between 8 to 15 years, and faculty having experience of greater than 15 years. So it is important to have the faculty and faculty retention is also to be maintained. As said by the other panelist, I totally agree with him that retention is one of the important parameter in case you want to improve your research publication and the perception that your the last parameter, the perception among the stakeholders is important. Now, the third important point is the number of students per faculty. Normally, it is expected to be 15:1. That is against every 15 students, we need to have one faculty. And this is one of the scenario that if you see the top 100 colleges, the rankings are good. I just collected the statistics. There are about only 0.3% of the colleges have got the student to faculty ratio of 1:10. 38% of the colleges have 11:20, and majority 46% of the institutions have 21-30 faculty. The moment the number of faculty per students are more, they will not be able to concentrate on the reception, and that is how the quality of the academics, research and the academics comes down. So this is very important to have a good student to faculty ratio. And now coming to the next point, it is about research publications. It is about the research publications. It's not that only few of the faculty make a publication. No, there is a formula wherein it is expected that majority of the faculty do contribute. It's an average, it's a ratio wherein number of publications get divided by the number of faculty members. So the research publications, the number of publications are important. The number of faculty members who are going to publish are important. The quality of the publication is also going to be measured in terms of citation. And that's how both number of publications, number of faculty publishing, and the quality of the publication plays an important role. Now the next point is about placement, higher studies and internship. Basically that comes in the third parameter. In this case of higher studies, it is not only the quantity or the number that's important. Also the weightage is given to the institutions where the students take admission to. In case the students are taking admission to higher top ranked colleges, then the weightage that is going to be given is very high. And also when you talk about the placement, the median salary is going to be considered, for the weightage purpose. That is, the students need to get placed into good colleges. So
1 minute, please.
Yes.
Just 1 minute, please. There's about 1 minute left, so we can.
Okay. Coming to the last point, it's about the peer or the perception. Here, the important point is it is the perception of the outcome of the students from an employer perspective, from the investor perspective, from the academic perspective, and from the public and the competitiveness. All these parameters are going to be considered, and they have tried to avoid the subjectivity to the maximum extent and given a weightage for objective approach. These were my key learnings to improve the NIRF ranking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gowdar. Our final speaker, excuse me. Okay.
Sai Satyanarayan Reddy.
Yeah,
Ready.
Yeah, I know my mouse was stuck, so it wasn't going forward. Our final speaker is Professor Reddy from Vardhaman College.
Yeah. So good morning to all participants. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, all participants and all 2020 annual leadership summit organizers. And I just, Mr. Ashok Setar might have given a clear picture about NRF ranking and what are the parameters, and also Mahesh Gowda is given a clear cut about the breakup. So maybe I think in the first slide in the introduction of the NRF, that is there anyway. Just move to the next slide, sir.
I don't have a next slide. I think you only sent me one slide.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Sure.
You're a co-host, so
Yeah,
we
let
will
me
stop
stop share.
sharing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sorry about that.
All right, go ahead and share. The green button in the middle
Google
at the
Drive.
bottom. Oh, you don't have it at the top yet.
Okay. Oh, shall I? Oh, 1 minute, 1 minute. Just a 1 minute. I just opened this.
Meanwhile, we still have a minute, so you can go ahead and set it up. We are requesting the panelists to think, the participants to think of questions they have for the first two speakers. So please make a note of that. All right. Professor Reddy, are you okay?
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you just, no issue, sir. You just show me that screen is enough. I think.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I just,
All right, let's go back.
Yeah. I just, explain what are the parameters.
Neeraj, please share your
I'm
screen.
doing that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, so this National Institutional Ranking Framework outlines a methodology to rank institutions across the country. I think the methodology draws from the overall recommendations from the MHRD to identify broad parameters for the ranking of various universities. And all disciplines, you might have already told, Mahesh Gadas has shown the all other, various disciplines where this NRF ranking is calculated, ranks are calculated. And I'm just concentrating on the engineering perspective because my college is an engineering college, and of course we have MBA also. So so when you club MBA and engineering, that comes in the overall ranking, but otherwise it is called exclusively engineering ranking. And the parameters, what I actually understand is the teaching, learning and resource, that is called TLR process. Teaching learning weightage is 30% out of 100. Basically these TLR process, the total sanctioned approved intake in the institutions considering all UG and PG programs in the institution, and also the total number of students enrolled in the institution considering all UG and PG, and also the total number of students enrolled for the doctoral programs. So this is given a good weightage, which comes over the 20 marks. So each parameter is calculated again for the 100 marks. So, and weightage is for the 30% in the total overall NRF ranking. So, and coming to the other parameter, which is called faculty student ratio, which is also 30 marks, which becomes, full-time regular faculty in the institution of the previous year. That is called retention. And regular appointment means the faculty on full-time basis, and also faculty members with the PhD and without PhD and UG and PG. So everything matters. So those colleges who want to get good ranking, so they must have good retention ratio, and also they should have a considerable good degree qualification, that is maybe PG or PhD. Then definitely they'll get good scores in the ranking. And coming to the other parameter, that is in the fraction of how many faculty are having more than 8 years experience, or more than less than 8 years experience, or more than 15 years experience. That gives a major weightage, that gives more marks. And similarly, the annual capital expenditure per student, so that comes in the other parameter. And also average annual operational expenditure per student for previous 3 years pertaining to engineering discipline only. So all these things comes in the TLP process and other things. Coming to the other parameter, research and professional practice, there is a combined metric for publications. So very good number of publications are very important, and the publications in the reputed journals, maybe Scopus journals, or maybe, so based on these criteria they have 35 marks. And similarly, combined metric for quality publications, we have 40 marks. And IPR and related patents and other published and grants, that is IPR, it is all 15 marks. And footprint of projects and professional practice, which is 10 marks. So altogether, this is 100 marks. That comes in the second category. This weightage is again a 30% of weightage. And similarly, when you come to the graduation outcomes, which is again 20%, and this 20% is again divided into 4 parameters. One is a combined metric for placement and higher studies, and metric for university examinations, 15 marks, and median salary 25 marks, and metric for number of PhD students graduated is 20 marks. Again, this comes with the 100 marks and weightage is 20. So 20%. And the next one is OA, that is outreach and inclusivity. So there, the percentage of students from the other states. So our state is Telangana state. The other state may be the surrounding states or maybe other states. So how many students are joined from other states? And that becomes the regional diversity. So that is having 30 marks. So percentage of women, that is women diversity, that is again 30 marks. And economically and social challenge students, again 20 marks. And facilities for the physically challenged students, the ramp and other things in the colleges, exclusively what are the arrangements made for the physically challenged people, the students. So all this comes with the 100 marks. So this weightage is OA. Again, this is about the 10% of weightage. And similarly, the perception, the last one is the perception, which is 10% of weightage for the engineering colleges. Universities, the weightage is different. And the ranking methodology gives the significant importance to the perception of the institution by the stakeholders. And this will be accomplished through the stakeholder surveys. So this is very, very important, as Ashok Setters has told in the previous, this thing just before that. So only 10% of colleges are having very good perception, and almost all colleges are having less than 10%. I mean, almost it comes to 0 or 1% or 2%, 2 marks out of 100. So this is where actually we want to concentrate. And coming to the journey of Vardhaman NRF, NRF started in 2016. That time we don't have any rank. We submitted the scores also, but we are not in the top 200. And later on, we improved our publications and patents and consultancy and other things. So then later on, that is in 2017, we are in the band of 151 to 200. So in 16, 17, 18, they are given in the band of 150, so less than 100 total ranks, and 100 to 150 and 151 to 200 rank. So 16, 17, 18, 18, we are in the band of 151 to 200. And later we improvise, in many parameters. And retention ratio we maintained, and we recruited number of doctorates, number of PhD holders, and we improved a lot of teaching pedagogy. Then there are so many publications that happened, and research projects are we brought. So many things have happened. Then we also filed so many patents, around 35 patents recently. So that is how actually a lot of improvements are happened in the college. And in 19 we are in 153 rank. They are given rank in 19. So 153 rank. So then this year recently we got 143 rank. So we are actually marching ahead with the ambient pace, because there are a lot of competition in Telangana. There are more than 350 colleges are there in Telangana, and we are marching ahead now. In the state of Telangana, we stand in the 4th position in the private colleges of engineering colleges, and slowly we are marching ahead. And definitely this will impact student intake, because in the MSET, the 70% of student seats are given by our government of Telangana. That is, they conduct the exam, the examinations, and definitely parents will look into the good ranking institutions, and definitely the good number of students will join which are having good rank. So that's where we are actually marching ahead, and we want to improve all these things, and especially in the perception, sir. This is a case study. I just explained a case study of my college. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Reddy. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Again, I want to thank all the panelists. I believe Dr. Kanapar has opened the chat, and I hope we'll get questions rolling in. And while Dr. Kanabar has an opportunity to scan some of the questions, some quick takeaways that I got is patience is key in getting the rankings to sort of move up in the ranking food chain. I also believe investment, incentives, and retention are very critical in making sure colleges and departments sort of move up in ranking. And I think this is a marathon and not a sprint is what I also heard from the speakers. So Dr. Kanabar, it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The first question that some have posted questions in private, and I have the rest over here in public. I'm going to request any of the panelists to answer the questions. And if you have a question for any one specific panelist, I will appreciate it if you say, for example, here's a question for Professor Reddy, or here's a question for Professor Gowda or Professor Saxena. So I'm going to go in the order in which we started seeing a post. The first one is from Mr. Neela Kanthan. It is, what do you think about the measure of research by grants? Do you like to advocate for the efficiency of utilization of grant? Is publication pattern per unit grant? And I'm requesting your view in the context of big grants, probably in the context of grants also to IITs and NITs. So who would like to take that question? It's focused on grants.
Can I
Yes.
make some remarks on that? I think
Sure.
it's a great question. You know, if you think about it, ultimately, grants are a means to something, and they're not the end. The end is the scholarly output. But unfortunately, most of the ranking systems are not sophisticated enough to to make those kinds of distinctions. So even in the US News and World Report rankings, the important thing is the total number of grant support that the college has received. And the assumption is that somehow quality comes with quantity. So that is my opinion, or my response.
Excellent. Now, since we have many questions, if you have second thoughts on the response, I'll request the panelists, Professor Reddy or Gowda, to comment on that later. I'll skip a question here. You may want to reflect on that from Keshav. It's how to improve the perception. Think a little bit about it. I'll go to the next question from Jutur, which is NIRF ranking. Which parameters are relative and which parameters are absolute? Is that pretty clear about the absolute versus relative? I'll appreciate it if any of the panelists answer that.
Yeah, perception. Yeah, this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to address the perception where actually we're also facing a lot of problem in getting the perception. The perception is basically it should be done with the survey conducted over the large category of employers. So I advise colleges and institutes who are actually recruiting the multinational company. So you have to maintain good relations and rapport with the recruiters. So what happens is in the NRF, there will be an asking, number of questions to the employers where your students are working. So basically plays a major role in getting good perception. That is what the.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. There are quite a few questions, some in private, some publicly are being posted. So can Professor Gowda or, for instance, comment on how the score for perception is arrived at and what initiative is required from the institution?
Hello? We
Yes.
lost the contact.
You can hear
Hello?
me? You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. So I'm talking about the perception. I think suddenly I lost the contact. So anyway,
continue.
So I advise the colleges to concentrate on the recruiters' feedback and also the stakeholders' feedback, parents and alumni students. And definitely these feedback will take a major role in getting the good perception. We're also trying it. Of course, we don't get any score, but we are trying in this angle because one mark in perception makes a lot of difference. It will drastically reduce your ranking. So if you get 2% in the perception, you will get 20 ranks will go down. So we got 43. Suppose if we get 2 marks in perception, our rank will be supposed to be 110 or 115. So that is a drastic change. So try to improve perception. Of course, you have to maintain the same, good marks in the research publications, and what you call maintaining the retention ratios and student faculty ratio, and getting good results, placements, all these matters, of course, So this is what I'm telling you. Thank you.
Excellent. What about some nitty-gritty details? How are patents considered? Do they have the same credibility as high-impact journal publication?
Yes, sir, definitely yes. There are quality publications, they have 30 marks, and general publication they have 30 marks. So definitely, if you publish good number of quantity and quality, there are two parameters. So quantity and quality will get more weightage than the quantity. So first 30 to 20 marks is for the quantity and 30 marks for the quality. Definitely, you have very good paper publications and general publications, and definitely they'll give a lot of weightage and we get good marks. Definitely impact.
Excellent. Professor Krishna, can you tell me if we have time and how many more questions we can entertain? There's really good conversation taking place.
Take another 5-6 minutes.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. The question that comes up, there seems to be a little bit of a tension between competitive tension between quality institutions versus up-and-coming institutions. So the question is it fair to put everyone in the same bucket? And what should the up-and-coming institutions do to compete with IITs or whatever?
Okay.
Can I take this? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So basically, it's a very valid and very good question. But the point here is, rather than taking the absolute value, for the evaluation, for the assessment, normalized value that is being taken. So the number of faculty members that are there are getting counted. The investment is big, but the division factor that comes when it comes to the total number of faculty, the normalized value will come down. So it makes a lot of sense in comparing on a similar platform.
Okay, excellent. Do scores that are less than 50 make any sense at all for considering for ranking?
Yeah, I think when I see scores like 2% or 3%, that makes you wonder whether how accurate they are in terms of reflecting the reality there. So some kind, I don't know that it might exist, that there has to be some guidelines. There has to be a minimum score. It doesn't help to give the input to a college saying that you're 2% on perception. There should be a floor which should, this is what we do in ABET and other places, that there should be a minimum score of 30 just because you're participating in the system. And then, and it can go higher depending on certain criteria.
Excellent. I thought there is a question on diversity, but I thought there was pretty good emphasis, which we heard from Professor Gowder on diversity and Professor Reddy as well. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed within the context of focus on diversity, other than, I believe this has been documented in the parameters?
Yeah, I hope it is more broad than just gender diversity. I think it is. I think it is, because they do look at number of foreign students, number of out-of-state students, and that all contributes to diversity. India is a tremendously diverse country, and diversity comes in languages and regions and so many. So it has to be a wholesome measure of diversity.
Right. So we are seeing a diverse of opinion from panelists. Some people think that that's pretty important. And then some think that maybe it should require less consideration. So what about the role of consultancy projects? What role do they play in the NIRF ranking?
So I will take this question.
Sure.
Basically, in the NIRF ranking in the research parameter, there are basically 3 points considered. One is the average annual research funding, that is average of past 3 years, that is called as FPR. And then there is something called as FPC, which will take about average consultancy amount that it takes. That the importance of this consultancy is how well you are connected to the industry, how well you are able to meet the industry, because finally the students, when they come out, they require to work in the industry, and they need to they need to provide the service to the external world or the stakeholders. That's how this average consultancy amount is also considered, and it is usually considered as an average of past 3 years.
Excellent. Very good. Is there any insight on relative importance, SCI index publications, whether they fetch more marks than Scopus indexed? Is there any information that you may have, SCI indexed versus Scopus indexed? Or both equally important?
So basically for the Scopus index paper and the Web of Science, equal weightage is given, but the less weightage is given for the Indian Citation Index.
Right. Excellent. Professor Neeraj Buch, I will take the next question and I'll pass it on to you. Is it right that institutions that lie in the band of 1 to 100 ranks can start virtual universities? So I don't know whether that's a question or a comment, but is it okay? That's the last question from Ramana. So the question is virtual, whether there is a focus on quality at virtual universities. I think that.
I guess the whole question of ranking and the online teaching and you know, is going to get very complicated, I'm sure. And somebody like Anil will have to.
For the